Climate change is reshaping our world at an unprecedented pace. So, what are some of the impacts of climate change, and what can we do to adapt and mitigate to these impacts?
Fire is a huge issue. Can you imagine less water, the vegetation is drier and the temperatures are increasing? Global wildfire danger is increasing across the globe. You can see those graphs just going up and up and up. That's 30 years worth of data. Persistent fire weather season length is increasing in the Mediterranean regions. And these are often the places of natural beauty, for example, the fynbos in the Western Cape. Then there are other issues I'm just going to touch on very briefly. There's the idea of melting ice, and we must remember that a lot of the ice is tied up in the Arctic Ocean. And this isn't not going to affect sea level rise because this ice is actually floating. Now, floating ice, when it melts, doesn't change the level of the sea. And I want you to do this experiment. Take a couple of blocks of ice, put them in a glass, and fill the glass up completely with water till you can't fill it up anymore. So it's completely full and the ice is floating. When that ice melts, you can even put a tissue under the glass to test this. When that ice melts, see how much that water level rises. And you will see that it doesn't rise one bit because the level of water has already taken into account the volume of that ice cube, and that's physics. Archimedes' principle, you can go and look that up. So even if all this ice melts, it's not going to affect the sea level. Although, if this ice melts, you're going to have to ask, well, if it's melting this ice, then it might melt some other ice which is on land. And if you add another ice block to the glass of water, into this, in other words, if you take this ice and add it into the ocean, and this is not floating ice, the sea level will rise. Such a concern that the Minister of Fisheries and Agriculture in the Maldives, an Indian Ocean island, had a cabinet meeting underwater to show the rest of the world that this is something that's going to happen to their island unless they do something about it. And needless to say, that's COP15, we've just had COP21, and nothing has changed. So is there any good news? Well, there is some good news, as we can make a difference. There are protocols for decreasing emissions. We are seeing alternative energy coming in. Even Mr. De Ruyters today issued a statement saying that Eskom, we can reduce our load or our load shedding, for example, by switching to more natural ways of producing energy that don't also link to climate change. He's not making that link, but that link is there. Water consumption can be reduced. We've shown that in Cape Town. We waste far too much water. We can increase our coping capacity through planning. We need to get used to rapid readiness, which means being forewarned about things that can happen. And that, unfortunately, means looking at improving our infrastructure. We know that if our infrastructure had been improved, then the damage in KZN would have been far less. And what we're dealing now is response. And response is much more expensive than readiness. We need to realize that. And then lastly, and not lastly, this is the last point that I've got, sustainable and regenerative agriculture. Farming in line with what nature is expecting are becoming more and more popular, and there are more and more people doing that. So the bottom line is, what if this whole climate thing is a big hoax? We do all this for nothing. Now clearly you can see that climate change is an important issue. But to solve the problem, we really have to do the things that we see in the SDGs anyway. We have to do the things which we respect nature, we respect clean air, we respect clean water, and we do the kind of things that we should be doing already. And that's going to help us to solve the climate problem.
Climate change impacts us all, but through both adaptation and mitigation, we can safeguard our future and protect both biodiversity and agriculture.